For those of you that don't know me, I'm David Elliott. I'm the Assistant Director of Financial Systems in the ERP Systems Group, and I want to welcome you to the fiscal year-end closing process meeting, information session, whatever you like to call it. Basically, we put this presentation together through the CAPS program, mostly for individuals in the departments. We're going to have a brief presentation from the groups below, sponsored projects, general accounting in the controller's office, procurement and travel, and then we're going to have a large Q&A session at the end for you to ask any questions or anything that you want to know. So that's what we're going to ask, is that everybody hold their questions till the very end, and once we do that, we will have microphones, and we will be able to come around, and you'll be able to ask anybody anything, well, at that time. Not quite anything, but almost anything. So we're going to get started with procurement, so Laura's up.
Welcome, everybody. First, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Stacy Mitchell and her team who are putting together this CAPS program. That is a training certification program for financial, sponsored projects, procurement, GL, et cetera. And this is the inaugural year-end closing class. We're very excited to have you all here. For 2009 year-end closing, Stacy's group has created this fiscal year-end checklist. If you've got that with you, please pull it out. If not, be sure to get one on the way out. It's a very helpful tool that they put together in working with each of the groups. Not sure what that was. To help you, to guide you through the year-end processes and what needs to be done. From our standpoint in procurement and distribution services, first, we want to make sure that your vendors have completed and authorized vendor supplier forms and W-9s on file so that they can be entered into the vendor database. We can't pay a vendor, we can't create a requisition, or we can't finalize a requisition and create a purchase order if the vendor's information is not on file. One note to make, recently we have made a few changes in that the supplier themselves must sign their form, their supplier form, validating the information. I know a lot of times we as end users fill out the supplier form for our vendors. That's still fine to do, you can fill it out, but the supplier does have to validate that what you filled out is accurate by signing that. We don't need an original, we can accept a faxed or scanned copy. And again, we do need the W-9 on file per IRS guidelines to pay that vendor. Purchases and commitments. We want to make sure that anything that you've purchased and you want expense to the current fiscal year, you actually have on site before June 30th. So you want to make sure that your purchases are made and they're received, if applicable, in PeopleSoft, as well as physically at your location for the fiscal year. So for those of you who generally don't have to do receiving, the purchasing PeopleSoft and AP system is set up that you must receive material goods over $5,000 in PeopleSoft in order for the voucher for the invoice to be paid. And there actually is, if you see in the Circle of Life in PeopleSoft, you can go in and look at that. There actually is a received icon. And the AP clerks are not able to pay those items over $5,000 if they haven't been received. You want to review your open purchase orders. You want to make sure that the encumbrances are correct. If you know or you believe that you have this PO has been paid out and you don't expect any more invoices, yet you're still showing an encumbrance on your expense statement, let us know. The best method to let the purchasing and AP office know things like that is through the customer care team email alias, which I'm not sure is on here, but it's customer care team, all one word, -PDS, which is Procurement and Distribution Services at case.edu. We have about 8 people that monitor that alias, so if one person is out for that day, someone else can pick up and handle that for you. In order to remove an encumbrance from your expense statement that keeps showing up and you know shouldn't be there, we do have to do that. It's not something that you're able to do as an end user from your area. You want to request that any of those encumbrances be liquidated, be closed, be canceled by sending an email to the customer care team alias. We obviously would need the PO number in that communication to close the PO number. Sometimes there are requisitions that are still out there that you may have entered and then realize, wow, I really don't need that. We can cancel those as well. You can also cancel a requisition that has not been turned into a purchase order straight from the requisition screen. The X, the red X in the requisition screen will cancel that PO. But if you need help with that, we certainly do that as well. The invoices need to be submitted to accounts payable, before June 30th with valid PO numbers. Sometimes it gets slowed down if we just get an invoice, doesn't have a purchase order number, a valid purchase order number. We have to go back to the buyer and sometimes the end user and sometimes even the vendor to figure out what PO number should go on there. The quickest way to get these invoices paid quickly is to make sure that the purchase order number is actually on your invoice. Let your vendors know if you're expecting to see a charge hit, you're expecting to see an invoice that should have been paid and you don't see it on your expense statement, check in PeopleSoft, see if it's been paid. If it's not even entered into the system, chances are AP doesn't have it. Check with your vendor. If there's something that you know needs to be expensed before June 30th, please call your vendor and say, hey, we really need this invoice. The invoices do need to be dated June 30th or before in order for them to be expensed in the current year. Travel reimbursements, statements of travel, etc. We're going to go over with Michael here in a minute. P-card charges. The P-card cycle runs typically on a normal month from the 26th of the one month to the 25th of the following month, depending on how that falls on a weekend or a holiday. So if you're a P-card user, what you purchase on your P-card from the 26th of June through the 30th of June will not be expensed on fiscal year 09 because the cycle cuts off on the 25th of June. Make sure that you get your P-card purchases in before the 25th. Go into PVS Net, make sure that they've posted. Sometimes a vendor, you may make a charge on a Saturday or Friday, for example, for the university, and they may not post that, the actual vendor that you purchased from may not download their machine until the following Tuesday. So be sure to, it's especially imperative in the last couple weeks of the fiscal year if you want to make sure that things hit your expense statements correctly, that you're in PVS Net checking frequently to make sure that what you think should be hitting will actually be hitting. Go into PVS Net as well and make sure that you reallocate your transactions as necessary. The P-card charges default to an operating account by design. If you need to move those to another account or you need to move those to a grant, you actually have to go into PVS Net after the statement closes or before. You can actually do it before, you don't have to wait. But there is a cutoff date, which is typically the second working day of the month, that you're allowed to go in there and you will reallocate to the correct speed type if the operating account that it defaulted to isn't correct. It's important that we do that so that after the fact you're not having to do journals to move that around. It really should be done within PVS Net before that's pulled back into the general ledger. Minimizes journals, minimizes confusion, gets everything where it needs to be. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Karutz, who has recently assumed the travel coordinator position within the Department of Campus Services. He's going to talk to you about advances and travel reimbursements.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
I'd like to, first of all, thank my director, Beth Nakamovitz, and Laura Artwell, and Gwen Nash. I'm kind of a hybrid position between material support and accounts payable. I just wanted to review today, we could, let's see, can we me advance this from here. That's all right. Wanted to clear up a few things. And again, I've spoken with many of you on the telephone, and I'd like to thank you. This period has been a transitional period for travel policy, and there are still some outstanding questions. And to smooth things over in this last couple of months, I'd like to talk about some of the things that have been a bit difficult that we need to keep in mind to keep the flow, keep the volume of the requests and advances moving. And the first item we have here is vehicle and hotel and flight receipts. We need, for the processing of the advances and the reimbursements, we need actual receipts with the typical last four digits of the credit card number, not itineraries and not reservations. Just wanted to make sure that everyone who is involved with submitting those to me has an understanding of that. It holds up things a great deal. When we get the itineraries and reservation confirmations in, they are in fact not useful as end receipts. The next one that we're dealing with a great deal is the payment, what is permitted before the actual travel. And the good news is that we have flight expenses that are permitted before the actual travel date. But policy does not permit, this year in particular, the hotels and rental cars before the actual travel date. So it's good to know that flights can be paid, can be reimbursed with, of course, the proper receipts beforehand, but the hotels only after the actual stay. And that includes also the vehicle rentals as well. Payment of flight expenses, we've talked about that. Flight upgrade permissions, we've had a slew of those recently. And essentially, to make a long story short, everything needs to go through the CFO, John Sedaris, prior to any type of flight upgrade. There are a number of rules. If you visit the travel policy page on our website, and we have that, I believe, on the next slide, it can address that. But the idea of permission after the fact is going to be increasingly a difficult one. So we'd like to see a reduction in those. International currency conversions, when you do have international travelers that you're helping, it's very important for the sake of process on our part to have the actual currency conversions written down on each of the receipts. That's very critical. Then we have detailed meal receipts with Gwen and Laura's group as well. That's very important for meals. The same holds true for travel meals, that anything over the typical travel allowance that we have in place needs to have a detailed meal receipt, as well as alcohol disaggregated or broken out using that particular account code. And that has resulted in a bit of delay as well with many of the reimbursements and advances. We also, one last thing I'd like to leave you with, the updated 2009 statement of travel expense. Some of us haven't gotten around yet to looking at the travel homepage, which has this PDF/Excel type file that helps us calculate the travel spends for our travelers. The new 2009 version of that has the accurate 55 cents per mile official mileage reimbursement rate. Some of us are still using 0.585 from last year. Well, it's fine for the second half of last year, but not accurate or correct for this current year. So I wanted to remind everyone to make sure that they visit the site at least once a year to retrieve that statement of travel expense. And just to leave you as kind of a point of information, you can visit our homepage to find out about a number of different things. Number one, travel policy and related policies. You can also view frequently asked questions. About every 2 to 3 weeks, I update those FAQs, and those are very, very useful. Information on preferred travel agents. We have Flight 2 and Traveline that help the university with that. And Travelport training dates, that is the software used for flight and a number of hotel reservations that we do. And we will have some training coming up in June and July. There's a date for each month, and you're welcome to visit our site to get more information on that. It has also Center for Disease Control alerts for your travelers. And by all means, please make note of our travel email address and, again, Travel Services homepage. And we'll deal with any questions at the end of our event here. And next up, I believe, is the Controller's Office.
Hi, everyone. Is my mic on? Could you guys hear me? I'm Danielle Morris, the Manager of General Accounting. I'm sure most of you are familiar with my face, if not my voice, if not email from dmm4@case.edu telling you something that needs to be done right, wrong, thank you, all that good stuff. So what I'm going to go through today is some of the activity that is with regards to journals, as well as cashiering processing. Again, myself, Danielle Morris. Pat Coast is here, as well as David Elliott to answer any questions. Again, we're going to hold those off until the end. Our cutoff for salary journals salary adjustments as well as journals are as noted. The information also that we're pertaining to for this session is all noted on the Controller's Office website, just so you know. So you may hear us say some things repeatedly. However, always keep in mind, if we did forget to make mention of something, everything is noted on the Controller's Office homepage under the highlights section with this document and everything that you have in your hands today. So with regards to salary adjustments and journal entries, the activity itself is supposed to be for corrections for December through the month of May, okay? That type of transaction, again, should be a correcting item. However, if a transaction, of course, is over 120 days, we all know that there's additional paperwork that has to be submitted before your transaction can be approved. So I myself would suggest that you process as many of your entries for that type of activity. Again, December through the month of May, if you could process that as soon as possible this month. Then what that'll do is help out my department, help out the SPA team, so that your transactions are processed in a timely basis and nothing gets left out. Because we all don't like to get those emails saying that something wasn't done correctly, because then you have to do them all over again. So that was a plug. Okay, so besides the transactions for journal entries, that also goes the same with salary adjustments. Salary adjustments, as a reminder, are processed within the HCM module, not as a financials journals. The two have to stay in sync, and that is why sometimes when an entry is processed in the financial system as a journal, you'll get an email from DMM4 telling you that your journal should be processed as a salary adjustment within the HCM module. So again, keep in mind, salary adjustments are processed within HCM. Financials journals are processed in financials. Okay. Second on my list is agency projects as well as petty cash. Petty cash transactions, and when we speak of petty cash for this presentation purposes, we're not speaking of a petty cash voucher, which is something whereas you made a purchase and it went to the cashier's office for someone to be reimbursed. That goes along with deposits. Everything for that activity, if you have a cashier's deposit or a petty cash voucher for someone to be paid less than $75, that's at the cashier's office. At this moment in time, I'm speaking of petty cash accounts. You are a researcher, you're a PI, and you have a study, you're conducting a study, and I'm one of your participants. You pay me $25 to take part within your study. You pay me $25. I take a voucher over to the cashier's office and cash that, either or you may have cash right in your office. So those type of projects have to be reconciled by the end of the fiscal year so that we can make sure that everything is being accounted for that information. So in the petty cash world here, that is what I am speaking of. If you have a petty cash account that needs to be closed out, if it needs to have a custodian change, that information should be sent to Tia. She's located in the Controller's Office, and her email address is TXR4. That's Tia Richardson. Agency projects. Agency projects are projects that are set up for external monies, as you will say, here at the university. And those are set up so that you are not intercommingling those type of funds with your department. As an example, I always pick on the athletics department because they have a lot of student organizations that have funds that are being overseen by different people within the university, because they're employees, they have access to PeopleSoft to run the reports. So you can think of them as a counselor or a co-sponsor for that actual organization. So I can think of the soccer club. They may have an event where they need to pay an outside entity for some type of event that they were having. They have agency projects where the university itself will collect funds for them as well as pay funds for them, okay? So those type of speed types, which starts with the alpha prefix of AGY. Those are agency projects. If your department is responsible for any of those, again, I pick on athletics because they have the majority of them. We will be in contact with you if those speed types are in a deficit position. Those speed types are identified on the general ledger when you run the general ledger, utilizing, again, a speed type or project that starts with alpha, AGY. Okay? Next on my list to discuss is check deposits and gifts of equipment. Check deposits, as we all know, the last day of the calendar for June is June 30th. June 30th is technically the last day that the books close. The books close on June 30th for the cashier's office for petty cash vouchers. As I was explaining, I'm someone who purchased something for the university or for my department, and I need to get reimbursed my own funds, again, up to $75. One petty cash voucher a day, right? One a day, yes, one a day. That's, again, the petty cash vouchers. Those type of transactions, as well as cash deposits and gifts, should be forwarded to or dropped off, deposited, whatever the correct term would be, on June 30th at 4 p.m. So if I'm in the cashier's office and I am expecting all my activity to come through for books closing June 30th, I'm sure Loretta and them would really like for you guys to actually not knock on the door at 3:50. So be wise and be understanding that there may be a lot of transactions and a lot of people processing deposits at the last minute. So just make note of that and be aware that if you do have transactions or deposits that you would like to post for June activity, to make sure you go into PeopleSoft, fill out your cash deposit or fill out your petty cash voucher, have it approved if it needs to be approved, attach any supporting documentation, should there be any, if it's necessary, and walk on over to the cashier's office by June 30th at 4 p.m. Not 4:01, not 4:02, 4 p.m. I put that in for Loretta actually a couple times. She'll be proud of me. All right, so we've gone through, it's the agency, petty cash, check deposits, gifts of equipment. My second to last plug with regards to this for June activity is that there is a journals class that is being offered for the CAP sessions. I'm happy to see that there are a lot of you here today that have attended the CAP sessions, whether it's be for journaling, for reporting, for ABCs of financials, for reconciling, for procurement services, for the sponsored projects and things of that nature. Welcome. I'm glad that you guys are here and have spread the word, because a lot of this was done by spread of word, of course. That's the plug for that one. The next thing is to let you know that when the June processing actually occurs and your journals, which are due again for the months of December through May corrections, when those journals are actually posted to the ledger and have reports will be produced, those reports will be produced for you by July 12th, okay? So you'll get the email from me letting you know that everything that was processed through, what's my date? July 6th, again, June transactions, preliminary close. Everything that has posted to the ledger at that time when processing occurs, you will receive an email either before or on July 12th to let you know that you can go in, run your reports either in the financial reporting database, you can go onto mycase.edu, the portal, and receive reports that way, or you can go into the online report distribution system and receive reports. So you have 3 ways to receive reports, okay? Now, if you happen to call me a little bit before July 11th and say, Danielle, I ran a report and it doesn't look right, I'm going to ask you, did you receive an email from DMM4 yet? Not being nasty or anything, but I know we're all a little anxious to get our reports so that we can get them ball rolling and finish up processing for June final, but be just a little bit patient. Trust me, by July 12th, you will have your reports. Now we're in the June final phase. June final. June final is when the books actually have closed. After you receive those reports, that's it. There's no more, there's nothing else. I know most of you do your jig at that time, and yes, you're done. Well, in the controller's office and in the supply department, we are not done just yet. However, we need your help to ensure that your salary adjustments, as well as your journals, have been submitted by July 20th, okay? For those transactions for month-end close for June final, you are only processing salary adjustments and journal entries for June's corrections. There should be no new activity being processed for June final. Let me say that again. There should be no new activity being processed for June final, meaning you're processing a journal, and what comes to mind for me is cross bills. I forgot to cross bill various departments for their cost per copy charges. June's still open. Can I process it? I'm processing the month of May. And the answer to that is, all right. Okay. So we're all on board with that, at least all of us that's in the room today, right? I should have had to sign in. Did everybody sign in? No? Yeah, all right. So I'll check first to see if you're on the list before I call you. Again, we're talking of transactions that are to correct June only, okay? So when you did your reconciliation in timely fashion, of course, and you see that there's a transaction that posted for the month of June that should not be on your expense statement for the month of June, that is your opportunity to process a correcting entry. Keep in mind that in processing this correcting entry for the month of June, that when you go in and before you click that add button, the date defaults to today's date. So if today is July 15th, and I click the add button before changing the date, I can no longer change the date after I've clicked the add button. So make sure you change the date to June 30th. That lets the system know that this is for the June final close. It also lets us know that you knew what you were doing when you entered in the journal, okay? So if you happen to enter in the journal and after you've edited and you've submitted it, because we all know that we all have to ESP our journals, edit, submit, we leave the P up to you. I'll take it back. Grants Accounting or SPA team would like for you to do the P because they have to get the documentation. Once that is then taken care of and your journal is submitted and is successfully submitted to the work list, it will then become an approved transaction. You print out your journal, attach backup documentation. It is then for us to verify that that transaction is actually a June correction, as stated. June correction. A couple notes for salary adjustments and journals would be that in your journal header, as mentioned in the CAP sessions, please be sure to put as much information within that journal header so that we understand what you are correcting. In the journal header, we don't want you to say what you're doing, because we can all look at the journals, at each person's journal, and see what it is you're doing, because that information is based on the speed type, the account, the amount, and the journal description. So on the lines tab, everything within that tells us what you're doing. We want you to tell us why you're doing it. So in your journal header description, you have 256 characters at your own free will to explain why this journal is being processed. Once June final is closed, again, cut off July 20th, 12 noon, keep that in mind as well. 12 noon, July 20th for June final. Your reports will be available for you July 30th. And again, that's it. Do your jig. You're all done. You will have your reports by July 30th. Now, if you happen to call me before then, I mean, honestly, you want to look at them that early, go right ahead. That's up to you. But July 30th will be the official date that the reports will be available for you. Again, if it happens to be before, which would be a good thing, we're giving ourselves enough time to make sure that everything is in order. Did I miss anything? Gifts of equipment, those type of transactions would be more so handled by the development office, is my understanding, as well as, what's another example? I think that's just gifts account, gifts, yeah, that would be the endowment department. So if endowment department, Lord, development office. So if someone is sending a gift to the university so that we can understand whether it is a gift of equipment or it is a gift, meaning physical check money, that transaction should be submitted to the development office by June 30th, 4 o'clock. I apologize, I skipped that. Okay. Again, if you have other questions in more detail as you think about things, I may have forgotten something, we're going to have questions at the end. Yes?
Now, how about computer refreshes?
Computer
Refreshes
computer refreshes.
is like every 3 years. If you buy, say I buy a computer, and then after a certain time period, we're eligible to refresh, and that means that the college or university pays for part of that computer, and then the department picks up a percentage.
I do not know if that pertains to year end. However, while the SPA team is up doing their part of the presentation, I will find out for you and maybe have a solution for you in the questions and answer section. Is that okay? Thanks. I'm now going to turn it over to Diane and Robin for questions for the SPA team.
Hi, we have Robin Trails here with me, but we just have more friendly reminders for everybody. And the largest part that we deal with year end is cost transfers. So in order for cost transfers that affect sponsored projects to be processed, we need to make sure that we have a timely receipt of all the backup documentation that needs to go along with those journal entries. So please try to get that to us as soon as possible. You don't need to wait until a couple days before the cutoff. As you do the journal entry, please send that over to your senior grant specialist. If you're not sure who that is, you can email. We have a SPA doc, SPADOCS, at case.edu, and that is monitored centrally, and we'll distribute that information to whoever is handling your projects. We need to also ensure that we have adequate justification. Danielle mentioned we have, I think she said 256 characters. Please make sure that you have a thorough justification of why you're affecting a sponsored project. That will avoid phone calls from our staff asking for further justification. As well as we're looking at the journal lines. For instance, on each line, when the account code is completed, it defaults in. So for instance, for supplies, if you use 53120, that will just default in with lab supplies. And what we need to see in there is that really a Fisher charge? If you're moving that, identify that charge, so that way it's more of an auditable transaction and we can follow that through on your statements. In addition, 90-day cost transfers. You want to make sure that those are approved by your financial office, the management centers, and that it answers all 4 questions that are listed on there. And we do need a thorough justification. So please don't make it a quick one-liner explanation of why you're doing this cost transfer 90 days after the original transaction occurred, because that will just be kicked back to you. As a reminder, operating advances, they must be cleared as well by June 30th. And we're going to be offering a sponsored projects cost transfer class on June 30th from 10:30 to 11:30. So we'll go into greater detail about what we're looking for in a cost transfer and ways to try to avoid cost transfers in the future. And Dave, you have the next slide. It's not working.
Do a slight fix on it.
Okay. I broke it, sorry.
There we go.
Okay.
We're going to cover a few housekeeping items and miscellaneous items, some payroll processing dates. If you need activity to hit the June 30th paycheck, all that time must be entered in HCM by June 15th at 5 p.m. and approved by June 19th at 5 p.m. And then any activity that you need to hit the fiscal year 2009 must be entered into HCM by July 2nd and approved by July 6th at 5 p.m. And all these dates are in the controller's office closing memo, which if you haven't seen, there's a link on the last slide that will show you that link and all these dates. Items related to year-end closing is the alternate approver. We don't want to see anybody, everybody likes to take vacation in June and then nobody's around to approve things. I know. People want to take time off. That's such a, everybody should be dedicated. But there is a spot in PeopleSoft on the main link on the left side of the screen. You will see a link that says My System Profile. You can enter an alternate approver in there with a date to and from. That way you can ensure that all of the activity that you normally will deal with is handled by an alternate approver. That way nothing gets held up and nothing misses the close. On your handouts, I believe that says $10,000 purchases with some question marks. That is not the case. $10,000 purchases do not need to go to the budget office. As much as we like to bug Joe, I'm sure he was being more than happy to. He's taking the whole month of June off, so you get to use your alternate ID. The last thing on the slide, like Danielle mentioned, is the preliminary June reports will be available July 2nd. One slight correction to what Danielle said. July 12th, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. July 12th, June 12th, it's close. July 12th. Those are only available by request and the portal. You cannot get those reports from the normal reporting system, okay? So if you go to run a report, you're not going to see any of the preliminary activity in the reporting system. So make sure you always look in the portal or by request. And we're going to turn it over for Diane. One last slide.
And mine, again, is more friendly reminders. But I just wanted to go into detail. Danielle covered this, but you need to make sure that you're aware of what each close is for. For instance, the May close, you're going to use that close to correct December through April activity. And then once we close the month of May, when the June preliminary rolls around, the only thing that we're going to approve will be the May activity. And then as well as the final June close, that would correct only the June preliminary activity. And we really need to adhere to these. Many central offices, and I'm sure any of the budget officers, are looking at how the financial position of the department or of the school is. And if we keep continuing to allow transactions to go through, you're not really going to be able to get an accurate picture. So please make sure that you try to get all of your corrections for December through April and for May. And then May activity, you'll only correct that for June. And then likewise, the June preliminary will be the final June close. So make sure that you print out the controller's office, or if you want to be green, you keep that booked, marked as a favorite, that you adhere to those dates, because sponsored projects will not be processing activity outside of these dates. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay. That is the close of our formal presentation. We are now going to open the floor for questions. Everybody's up there in case you forgot who any of us are. We have Stacy and Jennifer in the back with microphones, so we can all hear and everybody else can hear what you're asking. So who has questions?
While someone is getting ready to answer their question, I want to answer Jessica's question with regards to computers. I think that was more of an internal leasing program question, so that would be directed to the customer care team and procurement services. Should you have questions with regards to equipment that needs to be allocated over a certain amount of years, because that is what the internal leasing program is for, okay? Go ahead, Ginger.
I have two questions. Your discussion about the W-9s and being signed, is that retroactive for vendors that we've been using all along?
Negative. Yay.
And-
We actually will be contacting vendors in our database, sending out a formal letter that says, hey, we want to update it. So if we don't have a W-9 for them, we will be reaching out to them over the next several months.
Okay. And could you address the handling of the variance between salary distribution and salary paid within the departments? That sometimes is a surprise at the end. And it doesn't hit until the final close, so there's nothing we can do about it.
Well, the problem is we can't process it till the,
This one, you can hear her? Okay.
we cannot process it because there's always a variance. Because there's always, like for faculty, there's a timing difference, so there'll always be variances for them until the last month in June. So as soon as HCM and the payroll is closed, then we send the variance out, and it has to be processed before the second close. I mean, we don't really have any leeway on the timing of that, and maybe we could send out a little notice saying it's coming as of such and such a date, but we can't really do it any earlier.
It wasn't in the salary area. It was money that hit a different account number within the operating fund. I mean, it was like a supply or something. It showed up in a very strange place. It was not an offset in everything happening in the salary category, so
Was
it
it
just sort of
something
hung
through
there with
AP?
nothing to offset it.
Okay.
This was someone being paid through the HCM module, or this was a payment request?
It's the variance at the end about what's distributed and what they're actually paid is not the same.
But why was it in an account that's not salary related?
That's my question.
How about you and I look at last year so that we can get an understanding of what quite possibly happened last year, so that we do not have a repeat for this year? Thank you. You're welcome. DMM4. Next question, up top. I think the person standing right next to you would be able to answer that.
You gonna?
Oh.
You took care?
Oh, what was it?
The question was, when will the next HCM session be offered? And I don't have the date memorized, but I will get it to her.
Okay.
And I know Jennifer's in the back.
Trying for months, unsuccessfully to have encumbrances removed.
To have income.
We just, once they're on, we cannot get rid of encumbrances. I actually sent a table list to this.
Where's that feedback coming from? Is it one of ours?
No, I think it's this
Okay.
one.
I apologize. And there's an encumbrance
We have a number of encumbrances
that need to be closed out.
and I sent a table list, an Excel spreadsheet with the date, with all the journal entries, a whole list.
Okay.
And that was like 4 months ago. They're still on.
Now, when you say journal entries, I just want to make sure before I transfer you off to the department, which I think you need, you're speaking of, you have encumbrances listed in the encumbrance section
Correct.
of your statement. Okay, then when you said the word journal, that's where you threw me off a little
I'm
bit.
sorry.
That's
I-
okay.
I took all the information off of the budget sheet, the expense sheet.
Okay.
Transferred it to the Excel and sent it
And
as an
sent it.
attachment, we've done this repeatedly.
Okay.
And we just can't seem to get rid of encumbrances.
Can you resend that directly to me? And then I will make sure it's LLA2, not DMM4. Although if you want to, I'd be happy. LLA2.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Who else?
Any more questions?
In
Have a
the
question
back.
in the back.
Yes, we go through flight 2 for travel, and I have 6 greenhouse days have been charged since March.
One second, Dennis.
Like, he's-
You want to give him a? Hold on. Can everybody hear Dennis? Somebody give Dennis a mic.
Basically, the question was, there were some charges from Glidden House that hadn't hit yet. And Dennis?
Basically, what's going on right now is there was some discrepancies between Glidden House and Flight 2 in February as to who was staying what night. So that journal wasn't processed at the end of, or in February or March when it was supposed to be. I'm finalizing it today, I'm hoping. I finally got correct information on that. And so that journal should be going through, I'm hoping today or tomorrow.
Okay.
And after that, I'll be finishing up March as well, which is why those transactions haven't been seen yet, because I haven't been able to find out from Flight 2 and Glidden House who is actually staying which night. So that's basically it, yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Come on.
Wait a minute, in the back, Stacy.
That
Scarlett.
voice sounds familiar. Dance.
Regarding the PVS system, it seems this past spring there were some glitches with it. Names dropped off my screen who were card hold users. And I think it was February. I completed it on time, saved it, and costs still defaulted to the operating account. And I don't know if anybody else has had this problem, but now this, of course, requires journals. So when you ask for a specific journal header, and I suspect it was some kind of PVS glitch, what would be an example of a good
Good example.
explanation?
So you're saying that in PVSnet, which is the P-card transactions, is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, so P-card transactions post to your expense statements using the journal source of PCD. That's for P-card. That's all the P-card transactions that post for the month. What's being stated is that there were some transactions that quite possibly were glitched. I'm not sure at PBSNet, I don't utilize it. Is Michelle here today? No. Maybe there was a system problem to where things did not get redistributed as they should have. Every P card is associated with an OPR or an INSP type, is my understanding. And as a department administrator, whomever is responsible for the reconciliation of those cards, to go into PVSNet or what's the other one? PVSNet.
It's PaymentNet, but that's
PaymentNet.
for the T&E card. And
To-
so
to-
for a P card or a D card, it is PVSNet.
Right.
The cards, was this happen around the time the cards were reissued?
Yes, and also
Okay.
Chase took over.
Okay,
And it
so,
was
so
weird things happening ever since.
I agree. I'm with you, because they reissued the cards, and in a number of cases, the information that they reissued them under was not as accurate as we had hoped. So we're still correcting those. If you want to contact pcard@case.edu, that's the pcard alias, and we can work through any of those issues that you've had.
Well, I've written to, sent emails to customer care,
Okay.
but got responses that really never acknowledged that there was a problem.
Okay.
So you,
Case P card, they deal exclusively with the P cards. So if you can send a message to them, I'll make sure that we follow up on that.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to comment on the P-card situation. When the new P-cards were distributed, not everybody was put on our department list. I'm in biochemistry. So I just emailed Michelle all the P-card users in our department, and she made sure that all the people were on our list. And so we got like 2 reports for the month that we had the new card. So your people might not be showing up on your list. That's all. So I don't know if
There
that.
may be another solution to the problem, just in case.
Seen that a lot, that the people that you used to be able to see, that you should be able to see within your department, were not re-entered by JP Morgan Chase. So Michelle Adams and Andrea Jeffries of the PCAR team have been correcting those daily, actually. So if you still are having a problem, please do contact Case PCAR.
Any more questions? Yes.
Behind,
This is for Laura. Ensure all purchases made and received are completed. Is the individual notified if they have not received something and should have received it?
I'm sorry, if they have not
We're
received
supposed to go in
something-
and receive items.
In receive items, if it has
Over
not been
5,000.
received by the department,
Right.
and it's over $5,000, and they have not received it in PeopleSoft, that invoice will not be paid.
But do you notify,
Yes,
you do?
yes, but again, let me qualify, that's $5,000 or over
Right.
if per line.
Okay, so they'll get an email or
They do
something
get an
saying
email
you need to
from
go in
the
and
AP
receive.
clerk, yes, that's saying, hey, I've got this invoice, I can't pay it because it needs to be received.
Any other questions?
Just one more reminder and plug for the journals that appear on your expense statement. The MIS journal source, which stands for Machine Inventory System, has now been changed to ILP, which is what I was referring to when I answered Jessica's question. It's now called the Internal Lease Program, okay? So in the past, when you saw a journal entry, again, if it said MIS, which was Machine Inventory System, that now would be ILP, just in case you see something on your expense statements that looks a little bit different. The journal source listing is located on the General Accounting's website, where it lists all of the journal sources that pertain to any type of billing transactions, the department at which can answer your questions, and that department's extension.
Okay, a couple quick housekeeping items. A little plug for the CAPS training program for the classes in June. The Sponsored Projects Office will be having a cost transfer class on June 3rd. There will be a financials reporting class on June 11th and a journals class on June 24th. You can register for those classes and find out their room locations at the link below. And then I'm sure some people are going to have questions the minute they walk out the door and realize, I forgot, not a big deal. We have all the websites linked here with all of and the special one is the year-end closing memo, which has all the dates that we talked about today. So make sure you either print it or be green like Diane says, and make sure it's bookmarked for you in that memo. So if there's no other questions or any other feedback from the group, we want to thank you all for coming and have a good day.